I grew up in a very religious family. My grandfather on my dad's side was a pastor, so nobody in my family believes in aliens, ghosts, or anything paranormal. That said, my dad and my aunt have a story that no one has ever been able to explain. According to my dad, in 1978, when he was about 6 years old and my aunt was 3, they were alone in the living room one afternoon while my grandmother was in the backyard washing clothes. Suddenly, my aunt saw something through the window and screamed. My dad looked and saw something that looked like a man in the garden. My dad was lying down on the couch and realized he couldn't move anymore. My aunt was also terrified and unable to move. My dad describes his feeling as if he was floating. The thing started getting closer by jumping. It jumped over the wall, and then over the gate, and then over the low wall of the porch, ending up right in front of the house. Both of them felt like the man was speaking directly into their heads, but neither of them remembers what he said. When it reached the window, it jumped high onto the roof. Only then were they able to move again. They ran outside and saw the man standing on the roof, looking at them, still speaking something they don't remember. Then it seemed to slide backward and suddenly disappear. The whole thing lasted maybe 2 or 3 minutes after it vanished. My aunt started crying and even had wet herself from fear. My dad ran to get my grandmother, but she hadn't seen anything. When my grandmother asked my aunt what had happened, my aunt said she had seen God. According to my dad, it was a humanoid being, short and thin, with a head that was way too big for its body. It had very large eyes, about the size of saucers, with pupils and no eyelids. It had holes where the nose should be, and a mouth with no lips. It was wearing a tight suit that went all the way up to his neck, kind of like a diving suit, metallic and purple, and skin tone that was almost the same as the suit. During the entire experience, there was a constant sound that both my dad and my aunt described as a deep buzzing, like cicadas. When the beings spoke, they felt a copper taste in their mouths. After that day, my dad says there were other moments in his life when he felt like he was floating again, but without seeing the being. Of course, my grandfather said they were just imagining things and the family brushed it off. But something clearly happened that day, and it was never explained. Around that same time, there was an official investigation happening here in Brazil into UFO sightings. A white figure has been chasing me since I was little. For background, my earliest memory of this happening wasn't even mine. It was my brothers who told me about it. Basically, when I was around 6 or 7, my brothers went on a sleepover to my cousins without me. They came back from the sleepover and told me how they saw a tall, skinny, and uncanny faceless white thing. It was watching them from outside when they were trying to sleep. My cousin's house is very haunted from what I've heard. There's a lot of stories I can go over in that house. Anyways, they told me about it, and that's the earliest experience I can remember. Ever since they told me that story, it's been in our lives ever since. My first encounter was when I was 8. I lived in this trailer park. The living room had long windows on the side showing the neighborhood inside our living room. Me and my brother were planning to sleep in the living room that day. My brother was on the TV playing a game while I was on my laptop at the time. I looked up and saw the white thing, perfectly matched my brother's description. However, when I actually averted my eyes to look at it properly, it was gone. I told my brother and he immediately believed me, no questioning me. Since then, this thing has been following me. However, it started to chase me every time I've been seeing it now. I don't know what it's like for my brothers who know of it. I haven't really came around to question them about it. But every time I see glimpses of it, I see it running to me. But it vanishes before I can fully see it. Eventually, I moved out of the country I lived in all my life due to financial problems. In this country, I never saw it. In fact, I completely forgot about it actually, until I moved back to my native country. However, I've only seen it once or twice. It's still running, though it has gotten farther away instead. The scariest encounter is when I was on the couch in the living room, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched washed over me. I looked to where it was coming from, and it was up the stairs, peeking at me, staring at me. It wasn't running, it wasn't fully showing itself, but I saw it. Then it averted its head out of view. I haven't seen it since then. Just writing this or even thinking of it causes an extreme feeling of being watched, a feeling of anxiousness, and it causes me to have headaches too. Yesterday night, I asked my brothers about it. They do still see it. My middle brother still sees it. Oldest hasn't seen it or anything ever since he got his river rock. My middle brother said it crawls everywhere he sees it, and the oldest said it would just stare. I haven't had any new encounters with it yet. This happened to me back when I was 15 or 16, back in freshman year of high school, and to this day this has always been on my mind. I'm almost 21 now and I can't seem to forget this memory. For context, back in high school I was a big skater and had a small group of friends who all skated, and we would smoke weed and drink. One weekend, 5 or 6 of us were going to stay at one of our friends' house and go skating in the morning, so we all got together and went to her house. Around 1 a.m., we were all drinking and wanted to pass the time and play a game. That's when the girl whose house we were at put together the idea that we should play red door, yellow door. Everybody but me at the time heard of the game, so I had her explain the rules to me. She said to play this game we need to dim the lights, lay your head on my lap and close your eyes and raise your arms. Once this has happened, everyone in the room starts chanting, red door, yellow door, any other color door, over and over, and whoever's lap you're on will start rubbing your temples. After however long your arms start to get tired, and once you can't hold them up anymore, you put them down and you slip into a trance or a dream. The person whose lap you're on will start to ask you questions about your surroundings, and if there is anything you see, that's pretty much the gist of the game. We all agreed to play and took some shots first and then got right into playing the game. I was made to go last since it was my first time. I should watch everyone first to get the gist of it and then try it for myself, so I thought why not. The person who went first was my friend, I'll call them T. T went and began the game, laying her head down and closing her eyes, etc. She said she was seeing the ocean, but the water was purple and the sky was bright red. The second girl who went, I'll call her L, says she saw black frogs, blue grass, and a yellow door, and nothing else. The next few people went and were seeing colored doors, funny colored animals, nature and scenery, and just generally random stuff. My turn was coming up next, and I thought this was going to be really fun, maybe even just not work and I wouldn't see anything. That was not the case. I finally went and laid my head down and raised my arms and began the chant. It went normal for about 5 minutes, and I was keeping my arms up and they weren't getting tired. All of a sudden they got really heavy and dropped, and I felt like I was in a dream but conscious. I could hear Elle's voice ask me what I see and if there was anything around me. I said no, all I can see is pitch white nothingness, and she began to ask if I could move around and try to turn around, so I did. That's when it turned pitch black and it got weird, but I still didn't see anything but darkness. She asked if I could walk forward or backward. I tried, but I was stuck where I was. She asked me to turn around, and when I did, I was in a room. But not just any room. I was in the California Fort Ord abandoned military houses. I live in Seaside, California, like 2 miles from there, and grew up playing in those buildings, so it was familiar to me. But the walls were pitch black, and outside the windows were pitch white. I felt like I was in purgatory. It creeped me out, but nothing was going to prepare me for what I saw next. As I was explaining to Elle what I was seeing, I heard a noise, but not from Elle or anybody around me. It was in my head, or the dream I was in, that I heard the noise. So I turned around once again to see 5 people in all red jumpsuits, wearing gold skulls over a fire in the middle of the room, holding a dead baby, and after that I went silent. Elle tried to talk to me to get a response, but I couldn't speak or move or even just open my eyes. I don't know how long I was in that dream state before Elle abruptly shook me and I woke up to a face full of tears and visibly shook. Everybody around me was concerned but didn't know why. I tried to explain it to them, but I couldn't express the way I felt in those moments of being stuck in that trance/dream, and I don't know why I woke up full of tears, but that was one of the most weird and scariest moments of my life. I don't know how to properly explain what happened that night, but it's something I still think about whenever I remember that hospital room. This happened around August 2025. At the time, my mother was hospitalized after suffering a stroke. Her condition had improved, but she still needed to remain under observation, so the hospital moved her to a private recovery room. The room was quiet and well equipped, and had a small patio outside, which made it feel unexpectedly calm for a hospital setting. I hadn't slept properly for 2 nights due to worry and stress. That evening, I was exhausted enough that I fell asleep in a chair without realizing it. What followed is something I still can't fully explain. My sleep felt shallow, as if I wasn't fully unconscious. I was faintly aware of the room when a sense of unease set in. Shortly after, I heard footsteps outside the patio. They were slow, deliberate, and very realistic. What stood out was that they sounded like they were bare feet against the ground. Partly out of curiosity, and partly because I was frustrated at not being able to sleep deeply, I shifted my eyes toward the patio door. What I saw was a pair of feet standing there facing the door. They appeared unnaturally pale, almost lifeless, and no visible warmth or color. At that point, I had a strong sense that whatever came next would not be something I wanted to see. I closed my eyes and turned my face away to avoid looking, hoping the experience would end. Time felt suspended. I was still aware of a presence, as though something was there, watching the inside of the room. The back of my neck felt cold. After some time, that sensation faded. I felt marginally calmer and turned my body toward the door to change my sleeping position. Out of habit, I opened my eyes again to confirm that everything was normal. That's when I saw it. A dark figure was sitting there, staring directly at me. I can't clearly describe its features. What stood out most was how thin it appeared, and its eyes, wide open and fixed straight on me. I screamed purely out of a reflex. That seemed to startle it. It fled away in the most unnatural way, almost hopping like a rabbit, moving at an unusually high speed. Within seconds, it disappeared into the darkness beyond the patio. I was left fully awake. My scream had woken up my mother. She asked what had happened. Not wanting to disturb her or cause unnecessary worry, I told her I had just had a bad nightmare. I've heard many unsettling stories throughout my life, but this was the first time I experienced something like this firsthand. The memory has stayed with me. The closest comparison I can make is to the blacked out silhouettes used to represent unknown perpetrators in the Detective Conan manga. That image is what my mind returns to when I think back on it.